Creating, and we should be live. This is the Slots and Sockets podcast. Oh, wait, no. Slots and Sockets Live, episode number 1. This is a live version of us recording. I am one of your hosts whose butt is very comfortable right now, iRdMoose, and my partner in crime,
TurboPenguin.
Happy Saturday, Turbo, and welcome to the live stream. We did try to open our podcast with a live stream initially, but we decided recording for our normal show worked out better. But I just want to start out with a shout out to Sawbutt, guy I met at PDX Land back in November. He hooked me up with this chair. It was not sponsored, not special deal. I paid full price for it, but this chair is phenomenal. If you ever make it to PDX Land and you have any kind of back issues or anything like that, talk to him. He's an ergonomic specialist, and man, it's worth it. So skipping past that part, which I didn't notify Turbo about ahead of time, let's dive into it. So CES was this week. Turbo, you were there live in person. You got to see Jensen and get happy birthday sung to him by him. And many other things for which I am never-endingly jealous because I could not get the time off from work. So let's get into it.
So, I think there's a couple of things, like big topic things. Like the buzz at CES for sure is AI. Yep. Like if it's like, I feel like AI is going to be it's going to be named AI is going to be like name of everything. So it's like, it's not going to be a GPU, it's going to be an AI GPU in the future. And
well, AMD's doing that with their processors, and
it's going to be an AI mouse next, and an AI designed mouse pad and all this crap, whatever.
Please no. AI fans.
I know. So a couple of things that just kind of roll off the non-launch launch of 9000, the 9070. Mm-hmm. We've got to talk about that. It's very interesting because AMD says in their keynote, like their little speechy thing, that it can apparently only be 45 minutes long. And it's a big deal if it goes long or whatever, even though NVIDIA's keynote went long, but no one was counting minutes there, I guess. They didn't have time to really talk about RDNA 4, and that it was so special that it needed its own event, that it was too big for that. And I'm like, okay, you're at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, that is the launch of everything electronics for the coming year. That you have that's ready. And this is where people go to show off and get people hyped up about products. So I just bullcrap. Because I just, it makes zero sense. Like, we just couldn't fit it in. We only had 45 minutes, and I'm like, okay, you couldn't have talked a little bit less about Ryzen. You couldn't have talked a little bit less about laptop Ryzen. Like,
the last 2/3 was about all of this AI crap and their partnerships. Now, granted, some very interesting things came out of that, like Dell is actually going to be shipping some AMD CPUs for the first time in forever. But, it's weird that they just didn't have time for the 9070. Look, don't get me wrong. I have a habit of kind of going to conspiracy things, and the conspiracy theorist side of me is saying, well, okay, why would they have delayed that announcement? Why would they have just called an audible right there? Maybe they got wind of what NVIDIA was planning. Thanks, CEO of CES. and they didn't want to get wrapped up in a 5070 tie debacle or something like that with their 9070, and they wanted to push it off a week so that they could get some control of the news cycle for their GPU, which admittedly has very little market share compared to Nvidia.
Nvidia, come on.
I know.
We're not going
I
down
can't
that.
resist it. Come
I
on.
mean, I what I just can't fathom is how bad this, like, because the problem is that you've got managers and marketing people within an AMD and
Mhm.
Radeon who are really trying hard to like backtrack and kind of put that in a forward light. I'm like, guys, all you had to do is say, you know what? Like if that really was it, okay, let's just say what if. Let's
Yeah.
say that really is the problem here, okay? That you didn't have time. Okay, whatever. Nobody believes you, but whatever.
Right.
Okay? But let's just say that that is the issue. Okay? Um why would you have just said, you know what, we don't have time, we really want to release this correctly?
Yeah.
You could have said, we're going to talk about this on January 18th. We're going to talk about this on a different date, a different time. And, or they say, you know what, and say, we have a bunch of cool stuff. Here's an overview of what this looks like. There's tons of details. Go to amd.com/. Radeon beats Nvidia. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be like that, but what I mean, because like, you've got like I was looking here, like their gaming, the AMD chief architecture of gaming solutions and marketing was interviewed by PC World, and he was like, you know, he was like, performance isn't what you're seeing prior to CES. It's not accurate. Those rumors of performance leads, they're not accurate. And I'm like, that's because we're all guessing because you haven't told us.
Yep.
Like, at least with Nvidia, we can look at it and be like, yay, we have some numbers. They're loads of crap, but
Yeah.
they're numbers. And at least then we can dive in about what those numbers look like and why no one's guessing, because we're just trying to infer what they are. And even then, they didn't give you numbers. They just give you a little graph that says a 2 is here and a 1 is here and
Hmm.
somewhere is, over there. You
Yeah.
know,
People are down to pixel counting on that stuff.
I know, right? It's so, I mean,
Which,
it's,
when companies are vague, people are going to do that. And, yeah, it's dumb, but
this is why
there
you don't
there
listen.
there
This
are
is
a
why
lot
you
of
don't
people out there
listen to,
like me.
this is why you don't listen to first party reviews, and you'll
Yep.
always listen to third party reviews.
Yeah.
So, speaking of first and third party reviews, there is a little bit of I don't know, I wouldn't say I can, I think people are really getting into this fake frame thing,
Yeah.
because if you look at, and this is a switch over into the Nvidia side of things, because they were like, what they're showing in all of their slides and comparisons was, last is a 4000 series with DLSS 3.5
Right.
versus a next gen, a 5000 series with 4. Okay. And
Yeah.
I think that now, nobody knows how good DLSS 4 is going to be. Apparently, it's the multiple factor piece. So we'll see. But it's like, I don't know. I just, Moose, if you're going to spend $2,000 on a video card, are you going to buy it to turn on DLSS? I thought the notion of why we spend $2,000 is that we don't have to turn on DLSS.
Yeah.
Like, the notion
Basically.
is like, want a Ferrari. I don't want to have to buy a Ferrari and then be like, well, I gotta have to really just fake half of this. Like, the
Yeah.
notion is if I'm going to spend that much money, I want to just do the real thing and go fast.
I don't want to have to put a turbo and nitro kit to actually do what the specs say it will do. I want it to perform that way out of the box.
Like
Yeah.
I I am very interested to wait and see third party legitimate reviews,
Yeah.
because when you come out and you say, yes, we're going to have this and it's DLSS, and all of your numbers are focused around DLSS and last gen versus next gen, that tells me that maybe without the funny stuff of DLSS, maybe 5000 series isn't halfway cracked up to be amazing as people are hoping it will be.
Right.
I think people in general want that to be looking really cool. And I do too. Like, I want cool graphics cards. Don't get me wrong. I just am skeptical when they don't say things without, they don't say things correctly. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
They leave a lot of detail out and hope that you infer it in the best light, where, I mean, and a lot of people will do that by default. It's purely marketing trickery, and I don't like
Oh,
it.
speaking of
It's
marketing, oh my
mm,
gosh. Oh
yeah.
my gosh. The marketing BS.
hmm Well, I mean, CES is where you're gonna get shoveled BS left and right.
Oh my
So,
gosh. The marketing.
mhm.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. Like, it's like even then, like, you sit there and you sit there and, like, how many different times you have, you know military grade graphics card. There is no such thing as a military grade
Military grade
graphics card,
capacitors.
because then the military has the same graphics card as me and you. They
hmm
don't have anything different. Or military, like,
Well,
or
I mean, their RTX 5090 is $30,000 instead of 2,000, but still, because they have the certified capacitors, not just the normal
oh my
capacitors.
gosh,
They
it's
pay
so
for that
dumb.
extra stamp.
It just,
Meanwhile,
I
gold
hope,
toilet seats.
yeah, exactly. I hope that people really kind of look at some of the marketing crap that comes out of,
Yeah.
of some of these companies, and being like, yeah, I want military grade graphics cards.
Or
You know,
MSI with their, what was it? They were talking about circles being perfect, and they put 5 circles on their GPU.
oh my gosh, was that
Uh,
MSI?
that was yeah, I think that was MSI on one of their videos. I was actually watching Gamers Nexus video that launched
So
just
bad.
before we started not recording, but before we went live here, and yeah, that was one of the things they were. Yeah, it's just like what we need to do as a community is laugh at this stupidity. And, if it's a good card, great. Just enjoy the marketing comedy for what it is, because that's literally what it is. Just like all this AI crap and, AMD renaming all of their mobile CPUs like AI blah blah blah. With the exception of the what was it, the 9800HX, is which that was another good announcement they came out with, was we're going to have mobile with 3D VNAND. So score. That gives me a good reason to hold off on buying a new laptop, and with a 5080M in there, or if the 9700 or 9070. See, I'm still struggling calling it the 9070. Of course, I struggle calling my own GPU a 6800 when it's a 6900, but skill issue. Uh,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's there's good stuff. They're just trying way too hard in a lot of this marketing to differentiate themselves from everybody else. And It's like, okay, we've got a 9070. We're putting an integrated water cooler on it. Let's just make it look cool and make it actually cool. Now, I'll tell you one thing I really like about the 5080 and the 5090's board design, which there's some question whether the 5070 is going to have that type of board design where the actual card is a breakout board and everything else connects to it via cables. That
Does
eliminates.
that not just like worry you?
No. And I'll tell you why. Because the last couple generations of graphics cards, when they aren't support, and I think this is the reason they did this on the two high-end cards. Number one, it gets it a lot closer to the form factor of their server parts. So there's a lot more cross-pollination between, or potential cross-pollination between Blackwell consumer and Blackwell enterprise stuff. Because if you look at the layout of the 5090 that Jensen showed, it's very reminiscent of the stuff that they put in, because all of the stuff they put into the servers is modular. They don't use a normal PCI Express bus in a 1U server chassis. It's completely different. And so I think going that route was a good move, because one of the main issues plaguing all of the GPUs from the last couple of generations was cracking of the PCB and the chips separating from the PCB because the weight of the cooler is pulling the card down, bending the card itself, and breaking solder joints, ripping pads off of the boards, ripping pads off of the GPU, which is even worse, because then you're completely hosed. Ripping pads off of the memory and all of that stuff, and that makes the metal of the cooling system, the cooling solution, bear the weight of the card off of the PCI Express bracket rather than the card itself. So I think that's a good move. Whether or not it's going to be cross-pollinated to the rest of the line, I don't know. We'll see. But, I would say that's a big win for NVIDIA. Meanwhile, they're still pushing their melting connectors, and only one of them. It's and they got even closer on their TDP spec to the 650 watts maximum that cable can handle, or that port can handle.
Speaking of that, did you see on the Asus the Zotac card?
No.
They added a safety light.
Safety light. Interesting. Okay, what's that for?
Apparently they've added a safety light to know if your cable is fully plugged in.
That's clever.
They introduced a special safety lights which will indicate if the cable is not fully seated. This addresses the core issue behind the melting, which was not improved, which was improved with the 12 design later. However, this light will help ensure users fully insert the cable. Now, okay, so the other thing I have to say about some of these boards, like we've seen a lot of things coming out of a lot of boards. Obviously, there's tons of cards that are coming out. Like, I get it. But what's interesting is that the graphics cards from NVIDIA, theirs are all angled. They're not straight. They're angled, right. So it's not like straight pointed out to the case,
slamming into your glass. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone else has it coming straight out.
Yeah. EVGA with the 30 series was the only manufacturer to not have it coming straight out, like NVIDIA. And because NVIDIA's on the 30 series were angled as well on the Founders Edition card. And they brought them out the back, which made it a heck of a lot nicer for cable routing. And, nobody else picked up that idea and ran with it because they just didn't want to.
it's interesting, and I get why, because the PCBs on all of these cards are not the full length of the coolers.
Right.
The coolers are all longer.
Hmm.
What I don't understand is why someone doesn't make a breakout board and put the power at the end of the card, or try to figure out something, because these things that are like in the middle of the board are 3/4 away through the board. They all look like crap,
Yep.
and you're all gonna, they're just gonna be garbage. Like, I feel like it wouldn't be hard to be like, yeah, we probably should put it on the other side, like
Yeah.
pointing to the front of the case, or I don't know. Maybe you put it so it points up. I don't know. I mean, there's so many different things that you could probably do that would make a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Like, I just been like, did someone not look at this and be like, well, what if we just had it pointed straight up towards the top? Like, why would that be such a bad idea? That would
Yeah.
probably be very easy to do.
Yeah.
But
Or like you said, straight out the back of the card toward the front of the case, where
okay,
most situations you've got room to route.
okay. So here's the next question I have, specifically going to like the 12-volt high power. Okay. Um, are we going to see melting in this series? Because the 5090 is going to be pulling somewhere upwards of 575, 600 watts.
Hmm.
Do you think we're going to see some issues with power, or do we think that they've sort of figured some of the stuff? Because if you look at the design, it looks like there's more airflow around these, at least on the NVIDIA cards. Like, there's more airflow around those
Hmm.
cards, and I think that might be something to do with not me keeping them from spontaneously combusting.
Mm,
You know,
I don't get that feeling. I fully, because a lot of the airflow doesn't go over the connector, and that's kind of where the pain point is it's the problem is the connector's maximum designed power is 600 watts or 650 watts. 600 watts was the absolute maximum of 4080 or 4090 could pull through that connector. We don't know what the maximum power of 5090 can pull, but since we still only have the 4 sense wires, we have to assume that it has to be around that 600 watt mark. And people who were pushing their 4090s to that 600 watt limit were seeing issues with the connector being stable. Now, it's entirely possible that they were having insertion issues. It's possible that there were other things going on that complicated that. And, you know, maybe if you buy a Zotac 5090 and you run it up to 625 watts and your power supply is like, dear God, please take a break gaming. We don't need this much Fortnite. And, it's entirely possible that it could be just fine. But somebody else that doesn't have that indicator that, hey, your cable's not all the way in, might wind up with a melty connector or potentially a house fire, because 600 watts at 12 volts is not something to mess with. Um, NZXT should remember that from their riser cable fires.
well, nobody should be buying anything NZXT, in my opinion, but that's just
I'm
my 2 cents.
I'm surprised they still exist, but
Well, they didn't. Well, anyway, I don't think they ever really fully like addressed. And I actually, here's a good question: Can I go rent a machine
oh
from them?
jeez, that debacle. Yeah, ugh.
I'd love to see.
I bet you still can. I mean, they canceled Gamers Nexus's rental. He was like, "Hey, we're trying to cancel, but the website's broken." And he's like, "You know what? Never mind. We're going to keep it." And they canceled it anyway.
Okay,
Yeah.
because it's Flex. Okay, subscriptions. Okay, so let's see. I can buy for $59 a month. and I get a 12400F RTX 3050, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 500 gig NVMe drive. And
Oh,
apparently at a 1080p, it will play Starfield at 40 FPS. If I go to 4K, what guys it says 0, less than 20 FPS runs but not playable.
mm, yeah. And what's the monthly on that?
59. That's the Flex 1. Flex 2 jumps up to a 4070, but that's 129. That's double.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So you
Yeah.
can.
Oh, but they've got the Flex 2. Well, that's the thing is like, they got the Flex 1 Prime. Yeah, there's that. That's interesting. They've got a low version and then a Prime version. 159 for the Flex 2 Prime. Let's see what it
Or it
supposedly
jumps you to a
has.
4060. Yeah, the Prime is
4070
like
Ti or Ti. Ryzen 7 7700X. That's reasonable, but
I mean,
I mean, it's 159 a month forever. You could probably build this machine by ordering all the parts on Amazon and
well,
pay
hold up.
less than that to somebody like who's that credit company they use that does the like, I forget.
Hold
Um
up.
yeah.
Why are we seeing 14900K, 13900K? Why are we not seeing Core Ultra series?
Well,
I didn't realize. So is Intel still making the 14900K?
I possibly. It's also possible they may have just a lot of backstock because people stopped buying them for almost a year. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's that's a good point that they don't have any current hardware. This is all hardware that's a generation, for the most part, a generation old. I mean, let's look at their most expensive, the Flex 3
Oh,
Prime.
whoa, it gets
Uh,
better. Hold up. Okay, Micro Center
yeah,
has a bundle. So they have their bundles, right?
yeah, their bundles are
They
pretty
have
awesome.
for $599, you get a 14900K, 32 gig of RAM, and a motherboard. They do not have a Core Ultra bundle
Interesting.
at all. So the only bundles you get from Micro Center are last gen, not current gen, last gen.
Right.
I
Hmm.
figured that they would. So I
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
gonna
that's a
Google, is
that's
Intel still
weird.
making uh I wonder if they're still making. I wonder if it's still in production.
So the funny thing about this whole Flex program, and I don't know if they fixed it because I haven't paid attention, but I have seen reports both through Gamers Nexus and through other outlets that even if you order, let's just say a Flex 3 Prime, and it's supposed to come with a i9 14900KF and 4080 Super, 64 gigs of RAM, and a 2 terabyte NVMe SSD. Sometimes they may not ship those parts, or they'll say, oh, we were defining a class. So like I said, those are the reports I've seen. I don't know if that's still the case, but you know it's kind of weird that they're still shipping 14900 KFs. I'd really be curious to see if they updated the BIOS on those.
Oh, I goodness gracious. Um, let's see, what else do we have from CES? Intel apparently released a CPU cooler that looks black and blue. I don't think anyone's really going to care because I think everybody nowadays is just off to using third party coolers.
Mhm.
I mean, I,
The Wraith
I
Prism is pretty good still, but, you know, still,
they don't make it
it's
anymore. I
yeah.
mean, it was
It was
cool. It had the little ring around it,
it
so
was
it was kind
pro
of cool there.
yeah, and it was probably the best stock cooler any manufacturer's ever shipped. But, I don't know what happened there, but Cooler Master made a good CPU cooler for them. Um, I
Okay, so
don't know
speaking
why
of
they don't
Cooler
do that
Master,
anymore.
okay, speaking of Cooler Master,
Mhm.
okay, what is up with Cooler Master having graphics cards?
Uh, that's a really good question. I think they might be trying to aim at the same kind of market segment that Noctua and Asus are aiming for. Because you remember, Asus and Noctua have that deal where Noctua engineered them a heatsink and put their classically brown fans on it, and then slapped the Asus badge on it using one of their, I think it was one of their Strix boards. And I'm wondering if Cooler Master might be jumping into that because Cooler Master is one of the ODMs for a lot of these companies with their coolers. And why not get your name out there? If you're already doing the bulk of the work to build a cooler for somebody's GPU, why not
Okay,
buy boards
okay,
from them?
so let me just read this. This is, again, this is from somebody else, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. Uh it goes, this is very interesting. Okay, so hey, I kind of look at this and it's an interesting design. It's not bad. I would say it looks, pretty normal actually in the normal, market. Okay. But it said that they're planning their own GeForce RTX 50 graphics card developments are underway. They had a bunch of them at CES. Um, but that these cards are not going to be available in the DIY market
Mm.
as the company currently has no such plans. So does that mean that Cooler Master is going to start selling desktops?
They might.
Why would you go through and design it if you're not going to sell it to DIY? I think the only other option you would say, the only other avenue to sell it is to sell it with a one of your PCs, like I don't know, like Corsair does,
Yeah.
or to sell this design to somebody else like Dell or HP or something like that. But even then, I don't understand how they would make that a mutually beneficial when you sit there and say, well, it's better cooling. Why would Dell spend that much money to do that when they could just be like, well, we're just going to use the normal standard board because none of our consumers or customers would really care or know the difference. And
Dude,
they don't
they're
know the name Cooler Master anyway. So,
Dell shipped a blower 4090, if I remember correctly. So, I mean,
and I actually don't think that's a bad thing. I
no, I
still like
don't.
the blower cards
I,
actually.
they can get noisy, but they still do the job. And
Uh,
I mean, if you're in a business environment where you're slapping three, four, five of those in a 4U chassis, then you're not going to care too much about the noise because you got a lot of other crap making noise anyway. But and they did seem somewhat popular on the aftermarket too. But I mean, I'm looking at this cooler design and it looks good. I think it actually probably looks better than the Founders Edition card. And I think the play here, if they're not going to be selling it on
you
to
know what you read? They're
builders,
doing their pre-built.
yeah, it's going to be it's
This
going
is
to
going
have
to
to be.
be in their pre-built. So does that mean, when does that mean that Cooler Master is going to make a poop?
I don't know that they do, but I mean, Corsair already does with Origin PC, and ZXT does with their scam with the rental PCs, and their other options. The
Yeah.
you know
It's got to be something that's coming forth.
I buy power
That's
with
going to be
height.
very
You know,
interesting.
so yeah, I mean, I could see this being actually somewhat popular on the open market if people buy it and then a generation or so later they're like, hey, I want to get a new card and here I'll sell this one. Um, you know,
Systems.
I, honestly,
This is interesting. On their website, they have a systems desktops for gaming and work,
mhm.
and there's no product here.
So it's okay. This is going to be their launch line then. Okay, that makes sense.
Nope. There are some things if you go down below. So, for instance, I can buy a half 5 Pro. So a half is their case, and I can buy it with the 12700F and a uh NVIDIA GT RTX 4070, but it's sold out. But I can get a 4060 Ti added to my bag with a 12700F. Again, what is up with this 12th gen? Not, I mean, this isn't even 14th gen. Like,
Yeah,
is this like, I'm surprised that there are these pieces and that they mysteriously still make. I, this is baffling
yeah,
because the 12700F, okay, is not a current product.
yep,
Why would you go out? I mean, okay, the 12700F, let's see, release date Q1 of 22. This is a 3-year-old part. We're in Q1 of 25.
yep, yep.
If you didn't
Don't
want to
know.
sell a bad 13th and 14th gen, why wouldn't you sell Core Ultra? There is something funky with not wanting to that these people are not selling Core Ultra desktops.
Yeah,
What on there is something weird going on because
yeah. I think
Next is doing that. Let's see. Okay, dumb question. Can I buy an Alienware?
let's
Because
check. You know what? While you do
they
that,
have
I'm
to. Yeah,
I'm going to check Origin.
I wonder what the heck is going on here. Because you got to be able to say, okay, I want a desktop. Uh, view desktops. Yes, customize my Aurora R16. Okay. Um,
Just remember, they're going to put a really crappy AMD cooler on it and bolt that to the motherboard.
you cannot buy these. All are 14th gen pieces,
Okay.
14700F, 14700F. You cannot buy a Core Ultra from them.
Origin PC has Core Ultra 5, Ultra 7, and Ultra 9 in their Intel gaming desktops.
Alienware does not. Now,
I
okay,
think that's telling.
this is the Aurora R16 gaming desktops. And the top of the line, the $3,449 desktop with a 4090 has a 14900 KF, 32 gigs of RAM and 2 terabyte SSD. That's a horrible price, by the way, but whatever. Even if you account for $1,600 for your NVIDIA 4090, that means that the rest of your system is $2,000. Whew, that's a
Mm,
big markup.
yeah.
I can't hold up. Shop desktops. That's it. Okay, I wonder if it's different from Dell. That's Alienware. You would think that this is, let's see, desktops and all-in-ones. Okay. Um, and Core 7, but that's not so the Core 7 150U. What is that? Is that the
The Core i7 150U? Core Ultra 7.
No, it doesn't say Core. It says Core i7.
What?
Okay, hold up. No, go back to Google. I know doesn't sound, but it's live stream, and I don't really
This is
care.
weird.
This is Raptor Lake. It's a mobile. It's a Raptor Lake gen.
So Starforge Systems, I just took a look at their website. Interestingly, their top end PC has their Voyager 3 Elite, which is their creator stuff, which is out of stock, mind you, is an i9 14900K. The next series down, the
Okay.
Navigator, is their Enthusiast series, and that's a 7800X3D. I think you might have stumbled onto something here, because so far, out of multiple
Okay.
boutique manufacturers, we're only finding one that offers a 285K.
Okay. Well, it gets even better. Okay, main gear, no Core Ultra.
Oh,
You can buy 14900Ks. You can buy a 14700, a 600. You can buy a crap ton of Verizon.
right.
Zero Core Ultra. What on earth? Why are there no Core Ultra desktops anywhere?
Well,
And
not none, but very few. Yeah, it's weird.
I have found zero on my end.
Yeah,
I
well,
cannot now laptops. Now I will say I know that main gear's laptops are Core Ultras. Nope. This ML17 is again the 14900. Okay. The ML16 is the Core 7 Ultra. Okay. And that's the Ultra 7 155H.
I'm gonna check iBuyPower, see what they've got. I'm curious. Now you got me curious.
Very, very, very interesting.
Gaming PCs.
Okay, Micro Center. Hold
Intel.
up.
All right, and I'm sure in their configurator you could do something, but I'm just gonna look at iBuyPower and see what they've got here. Okay.
Okay, hold up.
Here's a 245KF. It's in a $1,600 PC with 8 gigs. So it's a Core Ultra 5 245KF. Elite Gaming, here's an Ultra 7 265K. So iBuyPower has a few. So far, out of all the builders we've checked, only Origin PC and iBuyPower offer current gen Intel CPUs in desktops. That we have to qualify that. It's in desktop. So bear with us. We're doing this research live.
Okay, so this is interesting. Okay. You cannot buy from Micro Center the 285K. Now, you can buy one PC, a desktop with the 285K. It comes with a 4090. Okay. It's $4,799. $4,800 for your Intel 285K. The 285K also sells on Newegg because I checked that you can actually buy it there, but it's $600 when a 9800 X3D just beats the snot out of it.
Yeah,
like not even close. Now, okay, so we do have a question, and I want to go over to that. This is a very interesting topic of conversation.
Yeah,
about how the 285K and the Core Ultra series is all but like non-existent.
right.
I thought maybe you would see some smaller, like lower, like the Ultra 7 and the Ultra 5. But it's very interesting on my search. The only place I found it in my play my system integrators was Main Gear, and it was only one laptop.
Yep.
And it had one SKU that had it. and that kind of makes sense because I think on the laptop side a little bit smaller. But is the
Well,
50 series looking like it's worth it? That's a great question because I don't think we know.
yeah. I think it's a solid maybe right now. And
I
and I actually responded in the chat, but yeah, I think we won't really know until people like Gamers Nexus and Jace 2 Cents get their hands on it and they do a gen for gen comparison just on pure raster, because raster still is the basis for everything. And well, and potentially raster with ray tracing as well, because that'll tell us a lot more about kind of the value and the performance per dollar that you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, I really think I mean, the other half I'm interested to see is how well DLSS 4 performs. Like if DLSS is really cool and it's smooth and you can really get frames, but let's be honest here, if my base card can generate and let's talk about can render 60 frames, okay, and AI is going to generate 180 frames,
Hmm.
okay, and get me to 240 frames, okay, the question is will you be able, will it run and feel like 60 frames, or will it run and feel like a 240?
Yeah,
And the notion is at that point 60 real frames is not the same as 240 real frames. Now
yeah,
maybe it is, okay, maybe it is, but I'm not going to go out there and say that they're the same because I don't know if that's the case. Now, the other question I have on DLSS 4, what does your frame time do with that enabled? Like,
yeah,
is that going to add in a ton of input? Because at that point, for every, one good frame, three generated frames, one real frame, three fake frames.
yeah.
Like, are we really going to get to the point where it's like, can you tell the difference between a real and a fake frame?
Right. Well, what we're getting to with DLSS now is where DVD and Blu-ray technology has been for a very long time. Most of the frames for the movies on disc that you get don't actually exist. There are keyframes, which in this case would be the actual raster frame that you're getting 60 times a second out of the GPU. And then there are the interpolated frames,
Mm-hmm.
and those interpolated frames are temporally calculated based on the preceding and the next frame. And so that's how we got DVDs to work. That's how we got Blu-rays to work, is that sort of compression. Now the compression algorithms have gotten way more complex than that, but at the fundamental level, that's pretty much what we deal with for the most part. Um, and so to your point, if we can't visually tell the difference, the big question is, can we feel the difference? And I'm sure there will be people who can visually tell the difference because, they react that quickly to things just because they're trained to do it. They're a pro level gamer that you know has amazing twitch and perfect aim, and they get called out for having an aim bot even though it's just their right hand and their keyboard, and you know. Those people may still have trouble with DLSS. But one of the interesting things that I saw in NVIDIA's screenshots, and again, take this with a huge grain of salt, is on some of the shots they were showing with DLSS completely off, they were getting somewhere in the realm of 50 or so milliseconds of whole PC latency, which means from the start of the render, two photons on the screen, it was somewhere around 50 or so milliseconds at 20 or 30. I think it was sub 30 frames per second. I want to say it was like 27 was the number that sticks in my head. And this was, I think it was in the Cyberpunk demo they were showing. And when you kicked on DLSS with multi-frame gen, whether it was 1 frame or 4, that latency dropped to, I think it was in the 30s or so. Which means, and again, that's total PC latency. So from you giving an input, it puts a photon on the screen showing that behavior in that 30 some odd milliseconds. And okay, that actually so that what that shows, I think, is that they're improving the performance of the actual rendered frames and using that performance to generate the extra frames through AI. Now, to what you're saying, I don't think that 240 frames per second is going to feel like 240 frames per second. I have the sneaking suspicion it's going to feel more like 120, but give you the visual smoothness of 240. And if it works like that, I think that's going to be awesome. Especially if there's functionally zero visual difference, because in games like iRacing, if you can improve the total system latency, that means that you are that much closer to being real time to the server. And as long as your internet connection latency doesn't play like AOL dial up from 1995, uh, it may actually have an improvement in the performance. And it very likely could be the way forward to get more performance out of these systems while still maintaining, well, arguably reasonable power envelopes. Because we've it seems to me like we've hit a wall where the only thing GPU manufacturers can do is just keep pumping more power into those cards. And that is not a good long-term strategy, because at some point you're going to need a 1,000-watt power supply just for a 50 class card, which nobody's going to want to do that.
I just, as I said, I need to see what DLSS 4 is, because I believe that there's a release of information that's coming of a 50 series card, of what that looks like. And I firmly believe that when it's all said and done, that we're going to get some really cool things and learn about it. But I'm not ready to just jump over and say, yeah, that's the coolest thing ever. It's a technology that, if implemented correctly, and if we don't really have, like, if the notion is that the AI, that your tensor cores are now being utilized to generate frames, okay,
Yep.
then I think that that's really, really cool.
Yep.
Because if they can slot in those real time, where it's like, you do one, you do three, you do one, you do three. If that's the case, then I could very easily see a performance bump, and possibly a latency decrease, because you're not necessarily, you're still rendering it,
Mm-hmm.
but you're only rendering one in every 4 frames, or one in every 5 frames.
Well, not
So
just that, but you may not even be rendering the whole frame, because if you look at the latency, it looks like they're rendering the actual brute force frame, I think was the term Jensen used. Um, they're rendering that at a lower resolution, then AI upscaling that to your display resolution. So if you can cut the render workload in half and have zero visual difference, that right there is potentially going to double your frame rate on its own. And then you start adding in the AI generated frames, and
yeah,
you know, you
I
you
think the
kind of get the
devil's in
best
the
of both
detail.
worlds.
I think with DLSS 4, the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
How well is it executed?
Yep.
And two, um, can gamers tell a difference? Because
Yeah.
if gamers can tell a difference, they're going to be like, yeah, whatever. And if it comes off and it's like, wow, this is impressive,
Hmm.
like I really the question I have is like, are you able to really like pick up the use of those tensor cores that you haven't used in the past? Then I think that could be very interesting. The other half of it is like, if I have RT on, those sensor cores are going to be doing RT calculations. Does that mean if I have RT on and DLSS 4 on, that there's going to be some compromises? There maybe there's some fighting for those, or is there some way that they have I don't know.
I
It'll
don't think
be
so,
interesting
but
to
yeah.
see what that looks like. We don't know a ton. I mean, I think that's really the end game of it, is that there's a lot of unknowns with it.
Yep.
And
But I think one of the things NVIDIA is trying to do is move to more of a unified architecture too, because the ray tracing cores were separate from the tensor cores. They were completely different animal. And the tensor cores on the 20, 30, and 40 series were also separate silicon from the shader cores. And so or the shader and CUDA cores. And so I one of the things I think I see them moving towards, and Jensen mentioned, is that your shader cores now can simultaneously do tensor operations and shader operations. So it's moving to a more unified architecture, and I think what we're going to eventually see is further unification in next generations, where you're going to be able to use that entire die space for shader cores, and your shader cores will on the fly be like, okay, now I'm a tensor core, now I'm a ray tracing core, now I'm a normal raster
that
core.
that would be something that would, I think, would be very cool,
Yeah.
for the notion that, you could, if you're playing a raster only game, you allow yourself to have and use the whole GPU sockets. And if you're doing more AI workload, you're going to get a larger AI workload.
Right.
Because part of, if you look at the keynote from Nvidia, it was is that it's more like I mean, the majority of it was talking about AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if you're going to sell AI to us, and you're going to sell AI, that these are AI PCs, then that needs to be that there's more AI that are going to come forth. And that means that hopefully your GPU can be smart enough that it can go from a a more AI focused workload back towards a more graphics workload. But
Right.
I don't think that's here. I don't think that that's what they're talking about. I think that's something down in the future.
Yeah.
But
That's the sense
um
I got with with what Jensen was talking about relating to the shader cores being able to do simultaneous operations. One of the things that I brought up here is our screenshot from the NVIDIA presentation, and you can see on on the 5090 that we're talking 3400 tops. That's well more than double of what the 4090 can do. And if you look at the graphs and for Far Cry 6, comparing the 4090 to the 5090, on just pure raster, we're talking maybe 20 to 30% improvement in performance. And AI performance is far beyond that. So what that tells me is they're slowly working their way to that unified architecture to do exactly what you were talking about last show, where they're trying to take AI from being a toy and turn it into something that's actually useful. And I think that's their first big step with the 5000 series, is getting those cores to be able to switch between a shader operation on one cycle and a tensor operation on the other, because the math for shader operations and the math for at least from my layman's understanding of it, the math for the two types of operations is very, very similar. I don't know that that's the case for ray tracing, because I don't know really anything about the math involved in that. But if they can figure out a way to unify that and turn that entire chunk of silicon, because the 5090 core is huge. And if they can turn even more of that silicon into multi-use cores, not only is that going to give us better performance on the brute force frames, that's going to also give us much better performance on the AI frames. And we might end up seeing 3, 4, 5 frames generated at a go rather than just, 1 to 4. And if that provides an improved perception of performance, then that's a good thing. As long as it feels right, that's and ultimately that's what it all boils down to is, this whole discussion about DLSS and FSR and XESS, which Intel has, all boils down at the end of the day to how does it feel to the end user. And if it feels good, people are going to love it. If it doesn't, people are going to trash it. And it's going to get the criticism that it deserves.
That will be very interesting to see what the view is from the gaming community of DLSS. Because if the notion is that I can turn on DLSS and I can get full use of my monitor, then I feel like that could be a good thing. Yeah. At the end of the day, though, I don't want to have to, like, if I'm spending $2,000, I don't want to feel like I have to turn on DLSS to get full use of my graphics card.
Okay, but think about it like this, because this generation's crisis really is cyberpunk with path tracing. So think about this. If you can get 240 frames per second out of your 5090 by turning off path tracing, going with normal RTX, and it looks good, but turning on path tracing really puts the hurting on your GPU. So you turn on DLSS with multi-frame gen, you get faster frame rates, better visual experience, and I'm just going to assume, for the sake of argument, that the feel is identical between the two settings. And you're running at your display's native resolution. Let's just say you're pulling 4K. All things being equal, would you rather be able to play at 240 FPS 4K with path tracing enabled and have the better lighting, or turn that off and just deal with the brute force frames?
I don't know. As I said, I want to see how this works out. Yeah. I think that there's obviously some benefits here. I want to see this in action.
Yeah.
And the downside to that is that there almost looks like you're going to have to buy a 5000 series to see this thing in action. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be very hard to understand and see this in reviews. It's almost like, and part of me thinks that there could be some people, how some people may have a difficult time with some of this rendering, because as you're doing, it's like VR. Not everyone thinks VR is amazing. Some people get nauseous. It could be interesting to some people really like it, and some people are like, yeah, I can totally see it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't know. We'll see. The 5000 series, if DLSS 4 is a thing and it works really well, I mean, the notion is that, a 5060 with DLSS enabled, like a DLSS 4, is going to be a very interesting card, because if you have a game where it has DLSS 4 enabled, mm-hmm. it allows you to generate, even, let's say, instead of 4 frames, let's say it lets you to do 3 frames. It just opens up some really unique opportunities that you could play Cyberpunk with ray tracing at 100 frames instead of 400 frames. Mm-hmm. Well, that's still really good.
Yeah. Well, 100 frames would be worse than 400. I think you meant to say 40.
Whatever.
But yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But that's it.
But and that's the thing, is like, I see this potentially as a benefit, but again, it all boils down to how it feels. And I think if you play devil's advocate here. I think with the way they demoed DLSS 4, while I think the 5080 at 16 gigs is stupid for this generation, it makes sense from Nvidia's side because their idea is, well, you're just going to turn on DLSS 4 and you're not going to need 24 gigs because we're going to be rendering at half resolution anyway. And I don't particularly like it, but I understand it. And I don't even agree with it. I think the 5080 should ship at $999 with 24 gigs. I feel like that is a ripoff. And it's just not what people should be buying. I don't think anyone should buy the 5090 or the 5080, but I know people will. And so,
I mean, in all honesty, with the lack of information,
yeah.
I mean, I'm leaning towards 5080 in all honesty for my personal machine because I'm in the position where I've got workloads where I could use a bump in 3D performance.
Mm-hmm.
And I've looked at some options and I'm not super happy, but again, I haven't made a final decision on what I'm going to do there.
Yeah.
I but it's really interesting. If you want good pricing, this generation is going to make very unique changes in the used marketplace.
Yep.
Because right now, if I go on marketplace, I can buy a 6950 in the $400 price range. A 6950 XT. And that's a good card. 16 gigs of RAM. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but it is up there with probably a 4070 Ti, 4080 in some games, but it's in that performance realm, but with 16 gigs of RAM.
Yep.
When you have these new cards come out, where does the value of some of these good cards drop into? Like, we haven't seen pricing drops of like the 7000 series. I mean, we've seen some, but nothing dramatic, right? When the 9070 XT comes out, okay, I mean, what is gonna, because the 7000 series is a good card. It's just priced, I think, in all honesty, a little high.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? I just am very interested to see where the used marketplace, because I mean, could you come in and like an XTX? Like, I don't know if that's gonna be like, I see people wanting to get $1,000. It's not $1,000 card.
No,
I don't care what you say.
No.
In all honesty, like if I'm honest, like what a card, like what I should be buying, like an XTX for, is probably in the realm right now, or even with this next launch, is going to be around 600.
Yeah.
I mean, but with the notion, like some of the leaks now, again, because freaking AMD won't say what what pricing is. There's talks that a 9070 XT, the big guy with 4,000 cores, could be in the realm of 479.
That's tempting.
Now, that card is going to be somewhere between an XT and an XTX. If that's the case, does that mean an XTX with 24 gigs, which is a very good card, by the way? Does that mean that's like $500 now?
It could even potentially be lower, because I think one of the things we need to compare to is the 5070 and the 5070 Ti. 5070 is launching at $549. So if the
Last
5070
gen. Yep.
competes with the XTX, then they're going to have to price the used market is going to have to price the XTX appropriately. So, yeah, I mean, AMD has a very interesting battle on their hands right now cuz
Well, and they have a problem
yeah.
because there's a lot of stock. Like, let's see, what do we have at Micro Center as far as 7,000 series? I think they have a stock problem because they're going to be competing on both ends with new gen and prior gen, and the new gen is going to be cheaper. Um, and let's see, if I look at my local Micro Center and let's go high to low price wise.
And while you're looking, I fully expect to see 4090s in the realm of $1,000 pretty
This is
soon.
interesting. I mean, at my local Micro Center, okay, I'm looking at everything that's in stock. They pulled stock back. They absolutely pulled stock back.
Mm,
There's not a single 7900 XTX or XT. Zero stock.
interesting. Well, they've been hard to
I
find in stock for quite a
workstation
while.
set W7700, W7600, and then a 7700 XT, and then followed by another um, W7500, and then a 6750 XT. All the way down to you can actually buy an HD 7750 for 215. That's actually in stock, a Vision Tech HD 7750. Not on RX and HD. That tells you how old that thing is. Holy crap. I don't know. It's very interesting. Now, with that being said, those cards didn't just disappear. And so it'll be interesting to see if they come back, like if AMD bought them back,
Yeah.
or I don't know. But I think it's been a very good. I think we'll try to maybe do some of these talks a little bit more.
Yeah. And before we do wrap up, we do have another comment that just came in on the live stream from PlaySync Tech. Howdy out there. Thanks for watching. The 5090s will be funding the path tracing of Jensen's future shiny leather jackets. The ray trace shiny jacket he wore in CES was funded by the 4090s. Will I still buy the 5090? Yes. So great comment, man. Appreciate that. But yeah, okay. You're not wrong.
The honest truth is I can see from a gamer's perspective the gameplay of buying the 90 series.
Yeah.
And I'll say, like, I get it. I get the notion that, because the honest truth right now is the 4090 is not a bad card.
No.
Okay. The 4090, but the question is what's the value of a 4090 moving on? I don't know. I'd have to do some research to see what they're selling for. I'd be very interested to see what, like, I could sell a 4090 on eBay would be.
I've seen some retail places in stock that have them in stock, and I've seen prices as high as $3,000, which is, I think, ridiculous for that. But the funny thing is Jensen doesn't get the majority of that. That goes to the retailer or to the to the marketing team of whoever made the card. And so, I kind of expect we're going to see a fair bit of inflation, and people are probably going to scramble for the Founders Edition cards, because I bet you, like, if the 4000 series is any indication, we're probably going to see significant inflation on the 5000 series.
I mean, think of this right here. This is crazy. I mean, I'm just looking at things that have sold. Here is a Gigabyte, okay, RTX 4090 pre-owned, okay. They took 1525 or best offer. Now they did say they took it. It doesn't say what it actually sold for. Mm-hmm. Here's another one, 1825 or best offer. I'm wondering if these best offer machines, like, here's a 4090 MSI Supreme Liquid. and
Mhm.
it sold for 1675. Now, if I remember correctly, the
That's
Supreme Liquid X was a $2,000 like card. Like that
yeah.
was a premium card,
Oh, yeah.
and it just sold for. But the notion is if I bought this new at the beginning and I sold this for 1675, and let's say I lost $325, I've used that card for a while.
Yeah.
And if I paid $325 and got most of my money back and now can go buy a 5090, I mean,
Yeah, I'm
wow,
not getting
that's
most of my money
interesting.
back on my 6900 XT. Ugh. But I've
I
had it
I
for
would say
3
that
years.
that's I mean, I would say that like for me on my graphics card, um, let's see.
Well, you also bought yours secondhand, right?
I did buy
Yeah.
mine secondhand. Wow, this is interesting. 6950s refurbished were being sold for 650. I mean 550. Pre-owned 515. I bought mine for $400. I got a
Mm.
really good deal on it.
Yeah, for sure. Good grief.
That is very interesting. I mean, heck, at this point, I could make money by selling it.
Yeah.
Anyways, on that bombshell.
Yes, on that bombshell, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to all the people watching live and commenting on our stream. It's been fun, and we might do this once in a while and do some live shows. So until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Take care, guys.
Good night, everybody.